Hare Krishna. So we are back with another new episode of Life Questions Inside from Gita. Science and spirituality seems to be opposite to each other, but actually they are the two sides of the same coin. Science deals with the gross matter, the measurable entities, the outer journey, and the visible things, whereas the spirituality deals with the subtle spirit, the immeasurable entities, and the invisible things. Both are actually seeking the answers for the same questions, but in different ways. Science seeks it with the experimental approach, the outer experimental approach, whereas the spirituality deals with the inner faculties like meditation to get the answers for the nature's laws and the higher power, how it created the whole world and many things, many secret things in the world. So let's start our question and answer session round with Manu ma'am. Let's welcome Manu ma'am in our studios. Ma'am, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Manu ma'am has been teaching Srimad Bhagavad Gita since many years. So let's begin with our first question. Our first question is, how do you develop tolerance?
I'd like to offer my regards to Poonam, to you, Poonam, for getting involved in this work of promotion of Bhagavad Gita and doing the anchoring part of it so well. And to Mudit, who is coordinating the whole thing on the level of IT level. And those who have sent their questions, and to them also I render my thanks and my regards. So the first question which Poonam has put up is today is, how do you develop tolerance? So this implies that in today's world, what we get to see most of the time is that, today's world is swarming with people whose tolerance level is extremely low. Most people whom we meet are ready to burst into reaction at the slightest provocation or even no provocation at all. Why are people so ready to let out their latent anger? And why is there so much anger bottled up inside them at all? What's the reason for this? So this is a very provoking sort of a question. Why today, in today's world, people have no tolerance, no composure and calmness inside? Krishna says in Gita that worldly desire is the greatest evil, and that is the biggest factor which brings in its wake all other evils. Like desire can be for some things, like desire can take the form of attachment, and desire can also take the form of aversion. The solution is that we relinquish both attachment towards the things, the people, circumstances, etc. of this world, as well as leave the aversion, leave the hatred towards these things. Because those things which we hate, even on them we spend a lot of mental energy and time, and maybe we think even more about those things which we hate and which truly rub us the wrong way. So the answer to this is that a person has to relinquish worldly attachment as well as worldly aversion. And tolerance comes naturally to that person who gives up all his personal desires, who wants to see the other people happier, more comfortable, leading more dignified lives, and who sees his own self being reflected in all the other people of the world. When the other people of the world are suffering, he suffers. When they are happy, he rejoices. But I mean, this is one level by which one can win, one can conquer worldly attachment and aversion. But the true solution is to give oneself over, to surrender oneself to Krishna's lotus feet. It is the true tolerance which comes to the devotee of Krishna, whose mind is full of peace and calm. Such a person sees Krishna in every other living creature. Accordingly, he cannot even dream of behaving with them in an angry or intolerant way. He will always, every time, whenever he interacts with them, he will show his love, respect, and devotion. Krishna has said of such a person, Santushtah satatam yogi, yatatma dhrya nischaya, maya arpit manobuddhiryo, madbhaktam same priya. So the devotee of Krishna and the karma yogi who has uh, conquered all personal desire, such are the people who truly become tolerant. And the person who wants to achieve tolerance has to follow such people. Hare Krishna.
Very beautifully said, ma'am. Meaning conquering over your cravings and aversions and the desires. So you could be free from that untolerable things.
Intolerance, yeah.
So then you get real satisfaction and contentment deep inside. Thank you so much, ma'am. Lovely answer. So let's move on to our next question, which seems to be very interesting, ma'am. Do the children have to bear fruits of their past actions?
Yes. In fact, all of us have to bear the fruits of our past actions until and unless we rise to an extraordinary spiritual level at which our past actions get are totally melted away. And that is the perfection of Karma Yoga, if we are able to reach that, or the perfection in Bhakti Yoga, or perfection in Jnana Yoga. All the three yogas or all the three spiritual practices, if one reaches perfection in any one of them, then the past sins are wiped away. Then one doesn't have to bear their fruits anymore. Otherwise, and that is something very, very rare, I mean, happening in very rare cases. Therefore, for most of us, it holds true that every person has to bear the fruits of his or her past actions, whether they were in previous lives or whether they were earlier in this very life which we are presently living. So one has to bear those fruits. Bhagavan Krishna has said, Anishtam Mishram Mishram Phalam Chatrividham Karmanam Phalam Bhavati Atyaginya Pretya Natu Sanyasina Kvachit. Yani, every person has to bear the fruits of his actions either in the shape of favorable circumstances, that is Isht, favorable circumstances, or unfavorable, adverse circumstances, Anisht, or mixed circumstances, that is Mishram. So either Anisht, Isht, or Mishra. These fruits we are bound to get, and we get the fruits of our past actions in the shape of circumstances. In the shape of circumstances, either those circumstances will be bringing some joy and happiness in our lives, or those circumstances will give us worries, anxieties, or griefs, or they will be mixture of both. And this will happen to us of life. I mean, there is no age or stage which is specified in Gita at which we cannot receive or we do not receive the fruits of our earlier actions. let's look at the life of a child. Everyone thinks that, childhood is the golden period of life, and everyone would like to go back to that period when there were people around to do everything for us and care for us and all that. But if one looks a little more closely, even in a child's life, it is not necessary that everything is giving him or her satisfaction. A child may be born into a very rich family, the parents love him also, but they do not have time for him. So the child is left with nannies and servants and maybe relatives. But those who are not giving him that kind of very close bonding which the child craves for, and that leads the child into some sort of unanalyzed, unstated depression. A feeling of loneliness might be there if the child is an only child. Then there may be other circumstances like he's not able to mix up at school because he's somehow or other developing an inferiority complex, not able to perform well either in studies or in sports. And those are the things which work for a child in school, and that's how people take notice of a child. And so this we would say that these are the fruits of earlier evil actions which are now being uh, given in form of these circumstances, deprivations, etc. And on conversely, if everything is working well for a child, because I mean here the motive is there of a child, main
Hmm.
motive. So if everything is working well for a child, then that shows that his past good actions are taking effect and they are coming to him in the shape of favorable circumstances. That he is very well cared for, people are always there around him, supporting him, he's not lonely, and he's able to give his best wherever he is. So, those are the fruits of past good actions. So, you can say that even in childhood,
Yeah.
the and even the family in which the child was born, even
Hmm.
that even that has been decided by record of previous actions. The family where you are born, your color, your shape of body, your intelligence, your everything, your talents, all those things have also been decided on the basis of previous actions. And then whatever you have to endure during your life as a child, that is also due to those record of evil or good. So even you can say that a child also receives the fruits of his earlier actions. I mean, in childhood also we receive them, and we always keep receiving them throughout life until and unless we reach that exalted stage of perfection. That is
True.
different. Now, this question seems to convey one other question. One real life example of one person who wrote that I was watching a lizard and a cockroach, and the lizard was fighting, was just going to eat up the cockroach. And I, wanting to save that cockroach, I threw a spoon at them both. So I mean, the cockroach escaped the lizard, but the lizard died. And at that time, being a kid, he did not react. I mean, he didn't know whether to worry about this.
Hmm.
He just let it go. But now he's grown up, and now he's recalling it, and he feels the guilt. And there's one story about one rishi called Manduk, who who had hidden some robbers who were hiding from the king's officers, and he was caught by the police. Maharshi Manduk was caught, and the punishment which the minister gave to him was that he should be made to sit on a very long spear made of iron and made to sit on the point of that spear. That spear is dug into the ground. and Maharshi, he was somehow or other conveyed to the top of the spear and forced to sit cross-legged on the point of that spear. There was intolerable pain involved in all this. But the king, when he heard about it, I mean, this punishment is given by a minister. When the king heard about it, he said that, no, just bring him down. You can't do this. So he revoked that punishment. But Maharshi Manduk had been too much stirred by the agony, and he summoned Yamraj. He was so very powerful and elevated in his yoga that he is able to summon these powers. He is able to summon Yamraj, who is the god of death and god of justice. So he asked him that, why did you give me this punishment, this terrible punishment? Was my sin so very great that I had just sheltered a few robbers from your people and they were going to kill them? So then Yamraj says that it is not just for this. Actually, you had to receive punishment for your sin committed in your earlier life. And that was that when you were a child, you were piercing innocent ants with needles and causing them a lot of pain, and maybe some of them died. So Manduk Rishi said, I don't know about my previous life. I have no recollection. You tell me, how old was I at that time? So then Yamraj said that you were less than 5 years of age. So Manduk Rishi said that in that case you have punished me wrongly, because the child, before he completes 5 years of life, he is not supposed to be responsible for his actions and he must not be punished. Like in Sanskrit, there is one saying, though I am not quoting from Gita here, but it is said in Sanskrit, and I think in Manusmriti, that Lalyet Panchvarshani, Dash Varshani Tadevet. Prapte tu Shodishe Varshe, Putram Mitravadachreta. So for first 5 years of life, you should pamper a child. You should pamper a child, be forgiving, be compassionate, be loving. It is not for you to judge such a small child. That is why Yamraj had to be, Manduk Rishi cursed Yamraj, and Yamraj was born as Vidur during of Mahabharata. I'm sure all of you know all this. Therefore, so this is the punishment which Manduk Rishi finally meted out to Yamraj for judging a too small child for his actions. Hare Krishna.
So it's must for everyone, I think, to come out from this vicious cycle of the birth and death,
Yes.
by pioneering one of the yogas, Karma
Yes,
Yoga or Gyan Yoga or
by
Bhakti Yoga.
following,
So that's
by
very
following
nice.
one of those spiritual ways which have been outlined by Sri Krishna in Gita.
Very nicely said. And I'm so surprised again and again. We have so many learnings and so many lovely tales or stories written in our scriptures, which are teaching us so many nice things. So let's move on to our next question. Question is, everyone wants that his child should get the best of everything. Now, if my child is living abroad for last 5 years, how do I give him preachings of Gita?
Firstly, I'm very much impressed uh, by by a person who recognizes the Bhagavad Gita as the best thing which this world and this life has to offer a person. I mean,
Yes.
for a father to be considering that, I want the best for my child, and Bhagavad Gita is the best thing which this world has to offer, but I am not able to give it to my son because he's now studying abroad for last 5 years. And how can I bring him closer to Gita? How can I impress the importance of Gita on him, living away from my child? And So, firstly, I'm very much impressed with this gentleman for thinking about giving the message of Gita to his grown-up son. Of course, it is much more, much easier to inculcate teachings of scriptures, teachings of Gita, message of Krishna to very young children that we all know about. That holds good in every case. I mean, there are children who, even before the age of 5, they are able to recite Bhagavad Gita by heart simply because they have been exposed to it at a very young age. There are people, how wonderful it would be if the father or the grandfather is reciting Gita shlokas every day in the mornings, and then in the evening they bring the children together, they their whole family to sit together and explain the meaning of those shlokas. Maybe only 2 shlokas in one day, or maybe only 1 shloka in one day, but what a wonderful way it would be for a child to grasp the Gita. But
Very
obviously, that has not happened in this case because when the parents themselves were young, the children were living with them. At that time, they themselves were not aware of the crucial importance of Gita in their lives and what Gita has in store for a person who involves himself. So at that time has gone. Now they have by circumstances, whatever, they're now their good deeds of past times, past lives. Now they are probably taking the effect, which did not happen earlier to them. And Punya ka Uday, it is called. So now that they have somehow or other become attached with Bhagavad Gita and been attracted towards it, and they must be quite deep into it in order to want it that their child should also absorb it. It will do good to their child. I mean, to reach that level of thinking, they must be very much involved. And so now they are thinking about it. Well, in Krishna's dispensation, nothing is impossible. Of course, it's wonderful if one starts young, whether
mm,
that is classical dancing or whether that is, or what do you call it, ballet, or whether it is violin or whatever art or whatever you are going to be involved or sports. But it's perfectly all right because Krishna has said, I mean, if that time has already passed away, then Krishna has said in Gita that um, Ant Kale, I mean, at the last moment, when the spirit leaves this body, if even at that time you who have never recalled me, who have never remembered me, and never chanted my name, uh, never worshipped me during your whole life is past, but at this last moment when you are just about to leave the body, at that time, at least if you recall me and if you sincerely chant my name and if you sort of express your love for me at that time, lovingly chant my name, then you will get the same outcome as my devotees.
okay.
The devotee who has been expressing his loving devotion and surrender to me during the whole life, whatever he gets, you will also be getting. So
Nice.
Krishna has made us all free that we should never get depressed or disappointed or worried whether we can attain Krishna now, having wasted so much of our lifetime. And this person, anyway, he must not be more than 50 years of age, who is wanting his son, probably less than that. And he's wanting his son, who's still a student, to understand the Bhagavad Gita. It is definitely not too late for him, and it's not too difficult. Only thing which one has to develop is that unwavering faith in Krishna's teachings. If one has that kind of unwavering, unfaltering faith in whatever Krishna says, whatever Krishna has said, his promises, then the work can be done. Nothing is impossible today. Today is the work of information explosion, and a person who is physically living away from his home and country, he can also receive all the advantages. I mean, almost all the advantages which which is the study of Gita, understanding of Gita, following the words of the Lord involves. I mean, he can get all those advantages even though the person is staying in US or somewhere else abroad. Today, everything is possible. But first, somehow or other, that person, that person's own curiosity to
Mhm.
attain salvation, that is, attain the objective of this human life, or to attain Krishna himself, that has to be aroused first. Once that desire is there, to the significance of God in our lives, that is understood. And once when that keen desire to know God that is aroused, after that nothing is impossible. There are so many ways today. When the boy comes home, I mean, in during 5 years, I think the child is expected that once or twice at least he will be returning home for holidays or something. At that time, one can lead him to attend Gita seminar, or one can take him to physical Gita class. One can give him material, the reading material, and the listening material, everything that can be given. And one can, very by gentle persuasion, one can prepare the ground in the child's mind that Gita is something very, very worthwhile. And when he goes back, also, he must keep in touch. Once this can be accomplished, that the boy's desire to learn about Gita, about to learn from Krishna, how to lead his life, once that is aroused, everything is possible. The person is saying that I want to know how it can be done. Today, that online Gita courses are being conducted by
Yes.
our organization,
Yes.
Lord Jagannath Charitable Trust. Then physical classes have even been started. Of course, that doesn't apply to the person living abroad. But then there are CDs, there is a media player, there is the book Bhagavad, which is giving a condensed version of Sadhak Sanjeevani, and there is the new book Gantavya Ki Or, which is being taught in the advanced Gita class. So many materials are there which can be transmitted, and by which, and a person staying anywhere in the world can attend Gita class, or even upcoming Gita seminar also, which is going to be held in English as well as Hindi. Earlier seminars have been conducted mostly in Hindi, just
Mhm.
except for one seminar, but today seminar will be conducted in English also. So there's so many ways and means for the person who wants that. Like Krishna has said in 7:3, third verse of chapter 7, that it is not that attaining me is so very difficult. It is not that. It is that so very few people have that true willingness, desire, and curiosity to start on the path of spiritual practice.
Lord Jagannath Charitable Trust is running many courses offline and online, and many new courses also. So everyone can join and everyone must join. So let's move on to our next question. Those who are humble and care for humanity are generally regarded as weak and incapable. Why is it so? So I'll request Manuman to kindly answer to this.
According to Gita, humility is not an isolated virtue, but it involves many other virtues as well, like concern for others, non-violence, non-retaliation, forgiveness, mercy, etc. So, where all these virtues are there in a person, um, that person is described by Krishna as taking the refuge of his divine nature or his divine wealth of these virtuous attitudes. When a person's behavior shows humility, it is not something isolated, but other qualities also joined with it, like Adveshta Sarvbhutanam, Maitreya Karun Evcha, Nirmamo Nirahankar, Samdukh Sukha Shami, the person who forgives, the person who maintains equanimity in joy and in sorrow, who has no egotism or conceit or pride, and no sense of me and mindness. Such a person is that truly humble person. Now, people, especially when people are judging in a group, judging someone, some individual in a group, they have that tendency to admire that person and fear that person at the same time, who doesn't care for the feelings of others, and who just accepts all the praise and adulation which the others are heaping on him as is very something his birthright or something, and just throws his weight about and shows off his own qualities. And such a person is normally admired when people are in a group. They will not be admiring, perhaps if they are individuals, maybe not, they will react differently. But this is a typical group mentality. Uh, you can see everywhere in schools, colleges, clubs, societies, in the professions, everywhere it is the aggressive person, the person who's outspoken, self-promoting, and who's a bully, who is admired and feared at the same time. Even a teacher, though he may not be a very strict disciplinarian at heart, and may not be something, may not be having a very hard nature, but a person has to keep up that pretense of being very hard and very disciplinarian, etc., in order to keep the children under control, because they respect only those teachers who are able by by their personality and by their
True.
expressions, etc., they are able to cow them down. So
Hmm.
one has to resort to this kind of policy. This reflects the typical mentality of a group. Whereas in all our lives, I think all of us have known persons uh, whom we habitually ignored or ridiculed because we were at that time with our friends. So we enjoyed that experience of throwing ridicule upon a person, and who has never harmed us, and who is not never making attempts to impress others, and never tries to show off or whatever talents and whatever things he is possessing. So people usually like to take such a person very lightly, and they just don't respect such a person. And it takes us some time, or it takes us some special circumstances to recognize the true merit of that person, because it is later on. I don't want to just, I don't want to lengthen this, but Three Idiots is coming to my mind. Uh, and it happens that the girl whom you were despising and whom you were just ignoring, she did not join you when you were, following around some rich, spoiled girl for the sake of her treats, the way she is throwing money around and treating you, but then bossing over you at the same time. So while you guys were busy doing this, that simple girl, she simply took her studies seriously. She, without showing off to anybody, she quietly read up, they completed her assignments, etc., and she emerged as a topper, and you were just left open mouthed and gaping. This person whom we just took for a silent fool who had nothing to say for herself, she is the one who has topped the class. So it takes us time to get to know anyone's true worth. And in chapter 12, Krishna has outlined the character traits of his devotees. It is Krishna's devotees who have those qualities of never projecting themselves, never trying to dominate others, and not and whom Krishna has placed on the highest spiritual pedestal. He says that my devotee is the greatest person on earth, but he never exhibits that hidden wealth of divine love which he is hiding in his heart. The person of true worth
Mhm.
is humble and keeps himself invisible. He is compassionate, but doesn't make a show of that. He is gentle hearted, he is ever forgiving. And it is the person who is devoid of these character traits, the person who doesn't have these divine traits in his character, about whom Krishna has said that ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham cha sanchita mamatma pardeshu tadvishanto abhisuika. That is the person who is having ahinkar, that is lot of self pride and conceit, and who's proud of his strength, who's proud of his lineage, and proud of so many other qualities, and filled with desire and anger. Such a person is not my devotee, and such a person is very, very different from my devotee. So,
Wow. So very beautifully explained, ma'am. So no matter how much people understand you wrong, but you should not leave your divine traits like humility, humbleness. Beautifully explained, ma'am. So much. Thank you so much. So with this, it's a time to put an end to this episode. And the desire of understanding the God is must in our life. That should not be left. Otherwise, the uh, life has no meaning. So, in understanding the God, we need to understand the two different entities, the Paravidya, the Aparavidya, and the measurable, unmeasurable, the visible, the invisible, the gross level of life and the subtle level of the life. So, together, because these two together make our life meaningful. So with this, we mark an end to this episode and keep posting your questions. The details of our website, YouTube channel, and the Facebook link are being displayed on our screen. So till next, Hare Krishna.
Hare